Hi and welcome to my channel. My name is Lynn and today I will be making a reveal wheel card and I'm going to be featuring the new stamp line from Artful Angel. If you didn't catch the announcement, they are now releasing stamps under their own name, which is awesome. So one of the first two stamp sets being offered is called Made by Me. And these stamps, they're hilarious. I crack up every time I read these. You can use them just on the backs of your card as sort of an extra little surprise if the card recipient flips to the back. But I wanted to challenge myself to actually feature them on the front of a card. And so what I'm doing is I'll create a reveal wheel where I'll be using 2 out of the 4 sentiments that are available in this set. And this is just a plain scalloped die cut from my Nested Shapes die. And then I picked an aperture window. I think it's from another die set. So your aperture can be really any shape that you want, but in terms of size, it needs to be less than half of the height of your wheel. Because you want to make sure that as the wheel rotates, that aperture window doesn't show what's on the opposite side of that. And so that's really the main constraint that you have. And since I'm making a USA 2 size card, I can't go super big. This is actually the second largest scalloped shaped die that's in that set. And what I've done already is cut out a template that is the same size as my card base, so 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I cut my aperture window through there, and I'm using that as a way of determining where it's safe to stamp. So you can see I've already poked a hole through the center of my scallop circle here, and then I've poked a hole through my template card base. And initially I did trace out all 3 kind of locations around the scallop, but I wanted to really make sure that this worked as expected. So I'm going to stamp one by one and then trace out sort of the safe lines where I can stamp within. And the key is that you want to make sure that you rotate this so that the previous sentiment is completely hidden, and then trace through your aperture window. And then when you go to stamp, you just want to make sure that you're stamping within that aperture window. Now, I'm actually doing some quick masking because each of these sentiments does read something to the effect of made for you with. And so I'm going to use that as the leading sentiment with the reveal wheel, finishing off the sentiment with these various really super funny sentiments. So the first one I stamped out says lots of coffee and a little bit of cussing. The second one says made for you with $52 in craft supplies. Which I think is just hilarious, and so true as well. So here I'm just stamping out that first part because I'm going to use that as a secondary sentiment on top of the reveal wheel. So that's kind of my leading sentiment. And the idea behind this card is I'm gonna send it to some friends of mine who they basically tore down their house and rebuilt essentially their dream house. And I think they can really appreciate a project costing more than you would expect, and having some frustrating moments where coffee and cussing is involved. So what I'll do is, so this will sort of be a new home card, and I'll probably write inside the card something to that effect, that that this card is probably not too unlike their new home or the process of creating their new home. But the last sentiment is going to read lots of love. So as they turn the wheel, they'll get these sort of funny, sarcastic ones, and then it will end on a more sentimental note. Though, as I was playing with the wheel, I wasn't sure if it's more funny to lead off with the wheel starting off with lots of love so that it's sentimental and you don't expect that there's going to be humor coming up after it. So I haven't yet decided if I want to start the wheel at lots of love and then have them discover the more funny ones, or start it off with the sarcastic funny ones and then have it end on a sentimental note. Let me know in the comments if you think one way or the other is more funny. But what I'm doing here is I'm transferring the location of where to cut out my aperture from the template that I made onto the final mats and layers that that will build up my card. So I've just got some plain red solid color cardstock, and then this gorgeous pattern paper is I think the paper pad is called Monterey Bay, and I believe it's from Photoplay, but I'll link to it in the description box below. It's also available at the Artful Angel shop, and if you do any shopping at the Artful Angel shop, use my coupon code. It's LVHC for LV Handcrafted and the number 10. So LVHC10, and that will get you 10% off of your order. So to create or to build up our reveal wheel or assemble it, I have this mini brad, which the head of the brad is going to be the bottom and the part that's actually stuck down to the card base. I have a smaller circle. The exact size doesn't really matter. It just needs to be smaller than your scallop circle or your wheel. And I'm putting adhesive only on that smaller circle. And that's because we want the wheel to be able to spin freely, but we need a way to actually attach it to the card base, and that's why we have this second circle to achieve that. And I've just used some low profile foam on the back of this. It gives enough clearance for the head of the brad, and so it's not going to dent your card base. And I've lined it up with the aperture through my decorative panel here and temporarily taped it down so that I can position it correctly onto my card base. And once it's there, I want to really test it to make sure it spins nice and smoothly. And especially since I did dot on a little bit of liquid adhesive, I wanted to, if it wasn't spinning smoothly or something wasn't working correctly, I could still lift it up if I needed to. And then the last thing I want to do is notch out a little sort of a thumb notch so that you actually can get access to the wheel in order to spin it. And I'm really grateful I didn't just wing it and punch through my decorative panel, because I almost did that. And it took, instead what I decided to do was just try out a couple of different locations with the template that I made. That's what templates are for after all. And I decided my 3/4 inch was too small. So then I wanted to make it a little bit larger, and I upgraded it to a 1-inch circle, but I wanted to move it up a little bit so that you can actually grab onto more of the wheel. But one of the things that I was also taking into consideration was to make sure that as you spin the wheel, you can't see the stamped sentiment through that thumb notch, because I feel like it's not as clean that way. And again, I upgraded to a 1.5-inch circle, and that seemed to work out just right. So what I'm doing is, now that I've got the location and the size that I want, I'm holding my decorative panel against my template, and then I just gave it a punch. So that gives us a little notched area so that we can actually get access to that scallop circle wheel. And if you wanted and you thought far enough ahead, you could notch through the card base itself as well. That would provide even more access and make it even easier to spin the wheel. But I think just at the very least, notching out the front layer works good enough, really. And what I'm doing is just comparing the various little sheets of foam that I have. I think these are from various Diamond Press sets that I have purchased, and Diamond Press is really good in that way. They kind of, when they have their kits, especially if it's sort of an interactive kit, they do supply you with things like extra foam pads and even folders for their die cutting machine, which I don't have, but it is nice that they give you those extras. What I'm doing is making sure that as I place this foam around onto my card base, I'm making sure to give plenty of clearance away from the wheel so that none of this foam will obstruct the movement and the spinning of the wheel. But I do want to make sure that that foam is thick enough so that it's not going to pinch down or add too much, or hopefully it won't add any additional friction to the top of the decorative panel here. And that way that wheel will spin even more fluidly. And what I want to do before I get this decorative panel attached to those foam pads that I added to the card base, I want to make sure that I finish decorating it, because while it's in this state here where it's not attached to the card base yet, it's still all flat. I can still burnish it and really make sure that everything is adhered and stuck down securely. Once I place it onto my card base, some portions of this front panel here will have foam behind it. Some portions will have the wheel behind it. So it's not going to be nice and level for me to burnish the way I like to. So that's why I recommend getting this panel nice and decorated the way that you want and have it nice and complete. And then you can attach the whole thing to your card base. Now, I wanted to add this made for you sentiment, but I didn't want it to just be floating on the card, and still wanted it to be somewhat linked to the aperture window. And I thought it would be kind of cute to sort of make it look like it's a signpost, kind of like your for sale sign on a house. But what I also wanted to make sure of is to level everything, because that extra brown cardstock, it adds an extra layer. And so I just cut up some scraps to make sure that's nice and level. And then I attached it so that it looks like it's sort of coming through or behind the aperture. And so that's basically my card complete. And so this is my initial thinking of where I'll start the wheel off. So say made for you with lots of coffee and a little bit of cussing, $52 in craft supplies, and then lots of love. So, but I haven't put this in the mail yet, so I haven't decided if it's better to start off sentimental and end on a funny note, or start funny and end on a sentimental note. Let me know if you have a preference. If you like this card, please consider liking, commenting, and sharing. And if you want to catch new videos as I publish them, consider subscribing to my channel and ringing the notification bell. Thanks so much. Until next time, happy crafting and have a fantastic day. Bye.